Hey guys and gals, Shane Stevenson here at the Buffalo Naval Park. Hope you're doing well. We're getting ready to open this week, so the crew's is working feverishly to make sure that everything will be up to snuff, and we still have a lot of work to do. But it's all exciting stuff. So, boy, I've really taken a bite of this shipyard building thing. A lot of my prior videos have been about shipbuilding, and again, that's kind of where I interface with industry, and manufacturing was kind of my thing before I started working here at the Naval Park, and so this is how I've been kind of interfacing with what I can learn here is about the building programs, and I've really embraced that. So for this video, we are doing the birthplace of USS The Sullivans, and I'm going to highlight a little bit of the Bethlehem Shipyard in San Francisco. Now, Stephen and I did go there. I think we're still kind of sitting on the film. We got there to Pier 70, and we just couldn't get that close, and I actually kind of have a Google map, and I kind of highlighted where we were actually able to get to. But I'm hopeful that that video can be released sometime soon. I know it's been a while, but Stephen has just been pulled in many different directions, and there was a lot of film and a lot of editing needed to that. So, but hopefully we can release that sometime soon. And yeah, I'll make a note to let him know about that, because it is pretty cool stuff, of course, visiting the birthplace. But for this, I've got a trusty PowerPoint presentation, and so we'll run through that. And now this will be Bethlehem Shipyard during World War II specifically. So let's go along. Let me get out. Let's see. Okay, that looks good so far, I believe. Okay, so I hopefully am still in the corner. Bethlehem, San Francisco Shipyard's World War II ships. So again, these sources, I always like to source my videos, right, to give you more information. What we're looking at is Norman Friedman's U.S. Destroyers Revised Edition, and to go back to that trusty Warship Builders by Dr. Thomas Heinrich. All right, and I've also used, you'll see the website there, shipbuildinghistory.com. One of the things in this book that they talk about, and I'm a pretty humble guy, but they keep talking about repeat ships. Specifically regarding this video, I was talking about I'm talking about destroyers and destroyer escorts and a couple cruisers. So reading this book, they kept talking about repeat destroyers. And I would be very interested in hearing what that means, because I could not find a reference to it. If you hear repeat destroyer, this is what it means. So anyone, please feel free, let me know in the comments, and I would appreciate it, because there isn't anything in the index that under R for repeat. So we'll see. All right, guys, here and gals, it's really kind of nice because it's kind of the similar orientation, looking from south on the bottom, north. You can see that in the 1941 to 1945 photograph of the shipyard, and then kind of an overhead, even though it's still orientated the same way. So if you look, it's kind of interesting. If you look in the 1941 to 45, get out my glasses there. It's pretty cool. You see kind of right above where it says 1941, you see this crisscross pattern of the streets. All right, and that's, if you go to today, that really is only one street left, and it's 20th Street, and you'll see that it cuts and goes diagonal down from, say, the center left down to the lower right. So that in the today shot is that crisscrossing pattern kind of right above the 1941. So that would be the only remnant. I'm not a landscape architect, though that's kind of getting into the landscape architecture that would be used today, is to kind of show the footprint. Right where the 20th Street comes up and then just kind of runs straight out of view, you'll see that little blue dot. That's where Stephen and I were able to get to. All right, everything else after that was fenced off. We did talk about hopping the fence, but, we just didn't do it. Maybe if I was 22, I would have done it, but not at 48 or however old I was, 49 at the time. All right, so that's where we stayed. And when we released the video and we're filming, we are in that intersection, that T intersection there, right where the blue dot is. I can imagine if you look closely at the 1941 to 45, you'll see all the slip numbers. And you'll see like 21 in the center upper left, 2021. I wish I knew what slip the Sullivans was at. You can see some of the ships in the water already in the lower right-hand corner, like slip 23 or 13, 14, and 15. But I can imagine it would have been maybe 25, 26, 27, 22, somewhere around there, maybe 21. That's what I can kind of imagine where the Sullivans was constructed. And in today's picture, that would be, if you go above the blue dot, you'd look a little to the left, you'll see what's now like a filled-in area with a lot of white stuff. Maybe it's like salt or something like that. So you can see like piles of white. That would mimic number 21 on the 41 to 45 version. So unfortunately, it's kind of hard to tell from that vantage point and that view. But there she is, Pier 70. All right, so the history is she started as the Union Brass and Iron Works in 1849. That's funny, the 49ers, the gold rush, things like that. Not surprising, I guess, that that's when a lot of companies in San Francisco would have grown at that time. The Union Iron Works launched the first steel-hull ship on the West Coast, which was the Arago, if I'm pronouncing that right, in 1885. She was sold to Bethlehem in 1906 as part of the steel company's consolidation efforts into ancillary industries, and, of course, a place to supply their steel. They purchased a few shipyards in the 1910s. And so when they had a critical mass of shipyards, they brought them all under the same banner of Bethlehem Shipbuilding. And then they had places, around the country, including San Francisco. So during the World War II lead up and the construction, very early on, the San Francisco yard received $18 million in federal funds to upgrade their slips, the docks, and new buildings and new workshops. All right, so through the public-private partnership, a lot of money was pumped into shipyards during World War II. And if I can find it quickly, using Warship Builder book, I said if I can find it quickly. Hello. Sorry, everybody. Getting closer. All right, so for World War II, the U.S. Navy invested about $229 million in shipyards, private shipyards during World War II. Newport News received the most at $21 million. Bethlehem Fore River, another plant that they owned, $21 million. New York Shipbuilding in Camden, New Jersey received 20. Cramp received 20, and then Bethlehem, San Francisco received 18 million. And then the list goes on and on. Here's a list of that from the book. I don't know if you can see that, but hopefully. So in total, during the war years, Bethlehem Shipyard in San Francisco constructed about 53 ships from very early 1942, right after Pearl Harbor, to late 1945. And we're looking, and that's where I focus on. January of 42 through about September 45, maybe August of 45. And in that time, for U.S. combatants and destroyers, escorts, they constructed 53 total. And then you can see it down there, the breakdown: 12 destroyer escorts, 33 destroyers. They did have 2 canceled, 4 cruisers, and then 6 garbage scows and seaplane lighters. So if I break it down, okay, I was ready to break it down into each kind of ship. So what research has shown is that Fletcher Construction really took off at the Bath Iron Works and Federal Shipbuilding because they had extensive prior experience in building earlier classes of destroyers. Now, Bethlehem was slower because it lacked the workplace expertise, and they needed the upgrades to the yards. A good example of this is with Bath and Federal. They had long established procedures once welding technology was beginning to overtake riveting technology, especially during the treaty agreements, because they needed to keep ships lighter, and welding was lighter than riveting. They set up workshops off-site within 3 or 4 miles of the actual shipyard, where they can prefab, as you see, bulkheads, longitudinal frames, superstructures, and then just bring those to the shipyard for welding onto the hull. That also meant then that the ships could slide down the ways a little quicker, freeing up that particular slip for a new keel. So in total, I might be off a little bit, but just take Bath Iron Works. For an example, Bath Iron Works constructed, I think about, if I'm remembering right, it's about 65 destroyers during World War II. And there are multiple classes, not just the Fletcher class, a bunch of Sumners, Gearings. So a few before the Fletchers, then the Fletchers, and then a few Sumners after. So they were really pumping them out, right? And as we saw with Bethlehem, they produced 31. They were contracted for 33, but they produced 31. So probably about half of what Bath did. And even, of course, to this day, Arleigh Burke class destroyers are built at Bath Iron Works. Okay, well, here we go now. Destroyer escorts. All right, so they did construct 12. Was it 12? 12, sorry, guys. Yes, 12 destroyer escorts. And they were all Buckley Class destroyers. All right, they started construction of them in October of 43, and they completed the 12 by July of 44. The total class, there was about 100 that were constructed, and 12 were built in San Francisco. They were about 25 feet longer, than the prior class, the Evarts class, I think. And they used a turbo electric drive, not a diesel electric propulsion system. And the last in service was in 1973, and that was the USS Gendreau and the Damon M. Cummings. The below you can see are the hull numbers DE 633 to 644. And on the left-hand side, the left-hand side, you see the USS Foreman, the USS England, which had that lovely history of sinking 6 Japanese submarines in 12 days, and the USS Damon M. Cummings. So for destroyers, what they did was, you can see the scattered hull numbers down below in the lower right. They produced 459, 460. Then the hull numbers assigned to the shipyard go right to 527 to 541. All right, and that's where the Sullivans falls in. And then they jump again to 605 to 611, 683, 684. And then the last 4, the 757 through the 760, are also Allen Sumner class destroyers. All right, but all the others before 757 were Fletchers. Now, the pictures here are the Abner Reed. I've talked about the Abner Reed, the Curious Double Wreck, the USS Owen, and then the USS Stephen Potter. Of course, USS The Sullivans is in there. So they had some earlier Fletchers, but certainly after the square bridge design, the 527 to 541, and then they were then assigned numbers much later. As mentioned, 33 total, but only 31 finished. 542 and 543 were canceled, potentially due to receiving contracts for the 4 Oakland or Atlanta class anti-aircraft cruisers. All right, because they were constructed right after those 2 were canceled. So they probably wanted to reserve the slips for the Atlanta class cruisers. So all of Des Div 103, which is the USS The Sullivans, USS Miller, USS Owen, USS Tingey, were all constructed next to each other in San Francisco. All right, and USS Owen, I probably have mentioned this before, but the USS Owen was the flagship of Desron 52, which was also made up of Des Div 104. Many of these destroyers, including not just the Fletchers, but the Sumners, were transferred to foreign navies. All right, especially the later hulled Fletchers and the 4 Sumner classes that were constructed towards the end of the war and then immediately following peace negotiations. Many of those were transferred to Brazil, Taiwan, and many other countries. And then they were in service up through the 80s, probably. All right, for the 4 cruisers, they were all modified Atlanta-class anti-aircraft light cruisers. Sometimes they're known as the Oakland class, all right, because there were the 4, which included the Juneau and the Atlanta. And then you had much later numbers. So you're going from 51, 52, 53, 54, all the way up to 95 and 98. So during wartime, with the loss of Atlanta and Juneau, they said these cannot go up against capital ships. They need to remain just screening and anti-aircraft light cruisers. So they modified them slightly. I think the major modification was they just removed the 2 waist-mounted twin 5-inch 38s. So where the earlier 4, including the Atlanta and the Juneau, had 16 barrels across 8 mounts, these had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 barrels across 6 mounts. But you can see here the 4 that were constructed in San Francisco, the Oakland, Reno, Flint, and Tucson. So they were in service from 1945 to 1971, and then you see the specific years of service there. So in total of this class, there were 8 total Atlanta class or / Oakland class cruisers, with 2 being lost very early on, November 1942, including the 5 Sullivan brothers. So, and then the 6 others were in regular service and then just put in reserve and then scrapped. So that is a little bit about Bethlehem Shipyard and the ships that they constructed during wartime service. Now, I mentioned in the PowerPoint, they also had Alameda across the bay, and then another ironworks on this side in San Francisco, but I did not include those because I was specifically talking about Pier 70 and Bethlehem. All right, that shipbuilding history website is a really fabulous resource. Of course, Warship Builders is, and of course, Norman Friedman's U.S. Destroyers. All right, so if anyone knows about that repeat, what that means, repeat destroyers, repeat cruisers, I'd love to know. Please leave me a comment. And cool. I hope you enjoyed. And we are preparing for members. We are preparing a 2000 watch and a members only video. So that should also be out this week. And then we will also pump some out next week for the month of March. So thanks for all your support. Again, we open up this coming Saturday, March 25th. If you're in the area or you plan on being around in the summertime, please come check us out. And we will see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.